Erin, I'd like to ask you a bit about content strategy now. So what are the bases on which you create, or like, do you have a checklist when creating a content strategy? What do you look out for?
Yeah, I think of strategy in 4 chunks. So I think sometimes clients actually aren't really ready for a strategy. And the reason I say this is either you're so early that you're still like in beta and you're just trying to understand if you have like product market fit and you don't need some big complicated strategy. Or maybe you don't even have enough content for like different parts of the funnel. And I hate to talk about the funnel because it's kind of an antiquated concept, but let's say we're getting people to understand what this tool is and why they need it and how it could make them have a better life. We don't need to be ranking for 100 keywords. We don't need to have necessarily SEO be our first play. We might just need the right messaging so that we can deliver it to people that we're having conversations with. So I think that it's, first of all, understanding, do we actually need like a real true strategy, or do we just need a process and a couple of steps that we're going to try, and then we'll kind of build from there. On the other hand, some people are already creating so much content and it's such a hot mess and they're so stressed and they have like 20 different vendors and they have all these internal stakeholders and everyone's confused. They might not need a strategy. They might just need to have some process to help them work together better. And then once they're actually working together, they're slowing down, then they're going to have a strategy. So just wanted to say that, like, it's not always that you need this huge, gigantic strategy for content. You need a plan. You always need a plan, but a whole strategy, it's kind of it's a complicated thing. If you get someone good, it's expensive. And if you don't have the internal people that know how to execute this thing, then you don't necessarily need this gigantic strategy. If I have some junior person who just got out of college yesterday, I'm not going to hand them a strategy and be like, once a quarter, we're going to do a research report and then we're going to chop it up and they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I just know how to write an article. So you got to also like work with who you have, take time to get the right people and go from there. So I would say number 1 is goals. So I always start with like, what goals are we trying to achieve? And then from there, there's 4 parts of the strategy. Number 1 is planning. So what is our process for planning what kind of content we're going to create? What's our ideation process? How are we going to collect ideas from people across the business? How are we going to collect ideas from our customers? And when I say customers, I don't just mean our paying customers, I mean the entire customer life cycle. So our audience, how are we going to collect ideas from them? How are we going to automate that so we can do that at scale? How are we going to take our ideas and get them into our, project management tool? How are we going to prioritize which ideas we're going to create? How are we going to align that with our product roadmap or our event roadmap? So planning is like a really complicated thing, and a lot of people don't have a process. They just kind of say, hey, what should we write about this month? And that's not a process, right? So helping to understand that. And then planning, how are you going to handle content requests? Are you going to be a ticket-taking function or a strategic content function? And that needs to be talked about and decided. So here is your resource. You have, 2 writers and a videographer and a graphic designer. They don't have infinite hours in the month. They can only do X amount of work. So you're going to be carving out, maybe 30% of their time is for taking requests. Maybe 30% of time is for executing the roadmap that you've defined. And then maybe, 30% of their time is left open so that you're able to capitalize on opportunities as you see them come up. Could be trending topics in the news. It could be maybe, somebody on sales is like, I noticed this interesting problem. People are getting stuck on this one thing. Okay, cool. So how can we spin up a campaign in the moment based on that need? So I think the content strategy has to be planned out. Like, what is that percentage of workload going to look like? And it's flexible, there might be ebbs and flows, but if you don't decide that and make that part of your plan, you're going to end up being a ticket-taking function, and you're going to be like a hamster in a wheel. This one needs this. This one says they want this. This one needs this. And then you're never truly able to be working in a strategic fashion.
True,
So that's the
absolutely.
first part of content strategy. And then, after planning is execution. How are you going to create the content? What kind of content are you going to create and why? What does it look like? What are the steps? So if you're going to be creating reports, okay, that's cool, but you got to bake in the distribution. You can't just be like, here's a report, now what? Because what ends up happening, you put it on social, you put it in your newsletter, and then you never hear about it again. So when you're baking in the distribution into the planning process, you know that you're going to create a report in a certain way so that it's going to be really easy for you to chop it up and turn it into blog posts. Chop up those blog posts and turn it into a LinkedIn carousel. Chop up that carousel and turn it into a Twitter thread. There's all these different ways of slicing and dicing assets. In the planning phase as well, I also think about the strategic narrative, because after working with a lot of clients, I find the same thing happens again and again. Clients spend a lot of money with an expensive agency to come up with a strategic narrative, and then they end up not doing very much with it. When a blog post gets delivered by a freelancer, they're like, oh yeah, can you add some of the strategic narrative, or they ask product marketing, can you add the strategic narrative into this content? And then you end up having this really shitty content because it used to have a storyline, it used to flow well, but now someone in product marketing got asked to add the strategic narrative, and now it's like this jumbled mess that's actually not customer centric anymore. So what a better approach is to bake the strategic narrative into the planning process. And that's something that I've developed over many years of seeing that had to be part of planning. Okay, so we have planning, we have execution, distribution, which again is thinking about working with other teams. So working to distribute things, retargeting, ads. Are we working with ABM? Are we planning any specific campaigns that we're sending some sort of gift or some sort of box to target accounts? What are we going to do there? Are we going to do that once a quarter? What percentage of our resource is going to be dedicated to that? And then, measurement, which a lot of times the cool thing about measurement is the content team needs to know what they need to measure, and they need to know what they're going to do based on the feedback they get. They don't have to be the ones actually doing the thing. And that's something a lot of writers, especially, I think from my experience and from talking to a lot of writers are creatives. There's a reason that they got into that field. A lot of writers are scared of numbers and data and analytics. And I'm here to say, it is possible to grow your career if you're a little scared of analytics, because you just have to know what you need to see. You need to have the right people that can pull the data for you into dashboards using tools like Domo. And you need to know how to interpret that data and make better decisions. But you don't have to be the one to be in the software, setting up the dashboards, pulling the data yourself. And I think that misunderstanding holds a lot of creatives back from rising in an organization when it really shouldn't.
Wow. So brilliant. Actually, I would, listen to this recording again and take notes again, because this was a lot of gyan,